Hi everyone, so welcome. So this is my coach's thoughts on the Old Ghost Road. So this is actually the race part one. So the race was at the weekend, and so we're going to talk about it. I'm going to break it into a couple of parts just because I obviously just talk too much. But hopefully there's some stuff of merit in here for you. And I'll also do a coach's thoughts on what I would do differently in training if I'm going to do this race again, because I have a list. So let's talk about it. A couple of things is that first thing in the morning, the option that they recommend that you do is get the buses out to the start line because there's not really any parking out at the start. The buses start at 4 a.m. to 4:25. Me being me, I was pretty much on the first bus. I wanted to be there about 4 o'clock, and so I was there just before 4. Advantage of that is you get to the other end of the course, you can get settled, you can sign in, you can sort out all your bags and where they need to go. You can visit the toilets, and but honestly I was there probably a bit too soon. I think if I was doing this again, then I would look to be at the collection point for about 10 past 4 to catch a bus between then and 4:15, and that would get you bang in the middle, and that'd probably be perfect. Just cuts the standing around in the cold first at the start line a little bit, but gives you enough time to get sorted and reduces the stress of have I made the bus, if you're turning up at the last minute. Don't be that person. That would be disappointing. So let's talk about the race. Just for full disclosure, I had a bit of a bad day. Once I was an hour in, my heart rate was through the roof, and it just wouldn't come down. And I don't know why, whether I had something viral, but it was at least 15 beats a minute higher than what it should have been in quite a few sections that I'd run. Like the first section I'd run before, and I can understand for the first part that being a bit elevated just with the excitement of the start. The first kilometre you're running a bit faster anyway, but an hour in, it was still through the roof, and it should have settled down by then. And it meant that it was a long day, and it also meant that anytime I hit a hill, there was no capacity in my heart rate to do anything other than slow down even more. So that was it made the day quite challenging, but I got through to the end, and that's all. That was the first objective, was to get to the end. Second objective was to be in the pub by tea time, which I kind of achieved, although I didn't quite get to the pub. I was lying in some Normatec boots that my mate had lent me, with a glass of whiskey and some pizza in the motel unit. So anyway, so that's the bus stuff sorted. I would probably pick somewhere in the middle as a sweet spot to get out to the start. Do the stuff that you need to do, and then let's talk about the start. If you're a slower runner, just start near the back. If you're a fast runner, start near the front. And I was planning on about the 10-hour mark, and it turned out to be 11:37, so I was way off where I thought I would be. And most of that was a couple of things. Heart rate was the biggest impactor, and probably a couple of other little things where possibly didn't do enough big hill runs, but that's for the hindsight thing. So anyway, when the gun goes, it's a kilometre before you hit the single track and the actual trail proper, and that generally is quite a fast kilometre for most people. And my advice with that is just treat it with caution. Yes, you're wanting to get into a good position relative to the people you're going to be running with, but also when it bottles down, there's about a kilometre of twisty stuff, not even that, and then it opens up into a gravel road. So you actually have an opportunity after the first section to get past some runners if you feel that you're being held up. But obviously tap the sign as you go under. It seems to be the thing to do. Like everybody in front of me was doing it, so we tap of the Old Ghost Road sign as it went under, and obviously you tap it at the other end. So, but the key thing about the first 15 minutes to an hour, you're in the dark, and I want to talk about that because there's a couple of things. So the key objective with the first section to specimen point is you don't want to roll your ankle. There's, once you get into the trail, it's quite rocky in places, and you're in the dark, and it's very, very easy to roll an ankle and just ruin your day. I bumped into a lady the day after. She got 13 kilometers in and rolled her ankle, and that was her day done. So, if you're making yourself some notes to do this race, the key objective for most of you should be not roll an ankle. Honestly, that should be, doesn't matter where you are in the field. You want to focus on getting through into the daylight where you can see a bit better and not roll your ankle. One note I will make on that in the dark, because you're in a conga line. My God, when you're in the conga line and you're following something and you're looking down, all you see is the person in front of you, their feet as they're coming up off the ground. And it's actually quite hypnotic and almost mesmerizing, and you kind of lose focus. And part of me does wonder whether that's cause of some of the trips and falls, because there was a couple of points where I was just following the person in front, and the rhythm you're all running at, and it's a case of it's kind of like you have to go, wow. Then there was a point twice where I actually just drifted back a little bit just to open up the gap, because I was just losing concentration just through the hypnotic nature of running, and you're kind of staring at the ground and the person, and all you can see is the ground and the person's feet. So that was quite distracting. So just a little something to think about if you're doing this race. If you've done it and you felt the same, I'd love to know. But that was my observation of that. The other thing to talk about is bridges. So the bridges all have a number, and they're quite strict that you adhere to. If the bridge says 2 people on it, that there should only be 2 people on it. Look, you might get held up a little bit. In the scheme of the day, it's nothing. So rather than getting frustrated that you're the 3rd or 4th person in a queue to get onto a bridge and it's only going to take you 30 seconds, my advice is take fluids. Take the opportunity to take nutrition on board. The reason I say that is in the race briefing, they talk about the one thing that most people for the first section wish they had done, and that's drink and eat more. So rather than getting frustrated that you're being held up, go opportunity to take fluids on board, which is what I did at one of the bridges. I got held up a little bit and literally only had enough time to take a quick sip and I was off. So in the scheme of an 85 kilometer run, you're not held up much. So just calm the farm on that. So the run through to the first hut and the aid station, as you get into that pre-dawn light and then it lightens up, it's really magical. It's and then you start seeing the vistas out of the river, and it's pretty cool. And then the triathlete in me, the first hut, I basically my plan had been to take nutrition, have enough nutrition on me, like from gels and that, to get me to halfway. And all I was relying on the first aid station was fluids. So I came in, filled my bottle. When I say I filled it, Ruth Croft actually filled my bottle. It was quite cool. But the aid station helpers are fantastic. Sorry, there was a crashing, banging in the background. Don't know what it was. You tell them what you want, they'll get it for you. You pretty much don't have to do anything other than stand there and look pretty. But the interesting thing is basically I filled bottles. I had got my bottles filled and I was gone. And then I was running along, trying to work out why the hell my heart rate was so high. That was the first couple of hours of my day, was trying to work out and stress this, like, oh, am I going to finish? Have I got something viral, etc. But what was interesting, some people who were obviously in front of me, there was quite a few for the next 15 to 20 minutes. Those people were slowly coming back through, and so they'd lost quite a bit of time by just dilling at that first aid station. Like if you're in the area at the back of the pack and you're going to be struggling, that aid station, don't stop. Stop and fill bottles and then go. The least amount of hanging around at that aid station, you'll be banking time for later in the day. They did have an extra water stop before you hit the climb up to the boneyard, and that was actually manned this year, and thank God that was manned. That was fantastic. The two ladies at that point were fantastic, and like I would have been filling my bottles from streams or rivers to get to the halfway point. So bear in mind that there is extra water. The climb up to the boneyard is quite interesting. Nobody really talks about it, but it is a long climb. And there is a bit where you pop out and you can see the track and going up, and you go, oh my God, I've got to go up to there, because you've been climbing for a while. And then when you kind of get up to that point and you're kind of looking and you're kind of coming in and out of the tree line, and you can kind of tell with the shape of the valley that, oh, I've got to go up to there. And it's like, it's a little bit disheartening through there. So you just have to, like, I was using poles. I took poles for all the climbs, mainly because I wanted to keep my body more upright and it be less fatiguing, and definitely needed them for the second half of the race. But I was using them on that climb as well, and it was more just to stop me from hunching over and completely destroying my lower back and glutes. It's hard enough as it is. And then the run down the boneyard's actually pretty cool. It's quite zigzaggy, and it's kind of fun, and I enjoy that. It is kind of cool, and that's where all the photographers are as well. So there's usually lots of photo opportunities in there, and then it's a run to the halfway point. And the funny thing is along the valley there, it's a lot longer than you think it should be. And like I could hear helicopters coming in and out in front of me, and then we went back into the bush, and we're running there. I was running with a few people at this point. You kind of have people in and around you, and then you have long space where you're just on your own. It's kind of bizarre. But there's about 3 or 4 of us, spaced over about 15, 20 meters. And we were running through that section. It just seems like ages, and it's like, I was like, anyone else think we should be there by now? It's kind of like that. So just be prepared for that. It takes a little bit longer. And then when I got to this halfway point, special needs, for me, that was an opportunity. Like, as I said, I was having a bad day. So I sat down, regrouped, filled my bottles, actually drank pretty much a bottle while I was sort of sitting there, got my special needs, filled up my pockets. I had a bottle of Cramp Stop in my special needs to take with me for later in the day. And I just had a moment there. And so that's kind of the first half of the race. And I'll talk about the second half of the race in part 2, because there's just not going to be much any more time really. But I think that first half of the race, there's an opportunity to run well when you can run well. And then going up to the boneyard, just accept that you're just going to be walking quite a few chunks of that. The mantra that I had in my head for most of the day was run the bits you can run. And by that I mean that it's very easy to just get suckered into walking the whole way, but there's bits where it pitches down where it's runnable. So where I thought it was runnable, it was, let's try and run this. So if you need a mantra for the climbs, my advice is run the bits you can run, and then accept the bits that you can walk, as you're not using your run muscles, so you're kind of saving your legs a little bit, your run legs for later in the day, especially for the descent. So, but honestly, that to the halfway, the first part of the run in the dark, your key objective should be just not tripping and falling. And like after the first hut as I was heading out, I saw a guy coming the other way, and his ankle had just given up. I think he'd rolled it earlier in the first section and was trying to persevere, and it's like his day was done as well. So I think there was 5 people in the helicopter from the first hut. So that's heartbreaking, because there's a lot of effort that gone in. So that's enough for me. But the next video will be about the second half of the race, which is the ugly part. And I will speak to you later. Bye-bye.